Good evening, guys. I posted the two trades I took. I guess it was like three different trades, but I posted those trades on X, but I'm gonna go over them with you guys right now. I have class that starts at 8:15 in the morning, so I said this in my post, but I didn't have like the opportunity to trade New York AM sessions, so I took this trade right here, where right on open, we went down. And if you look on the hourly, we go down into this current new week opening gap, and we filled this order block without taking out this low. And all we had done before this in pre-market was just take out subsequent lows. So when we had a market structure shift right here, and then we took out buy side liquidity and left this order block right here, I was fairly convinced that we would be heading up towards these relative equal buy side liquidity. It just seemed like the most obvious option to me. So um, I saw this big move up and I just kind of wanted an entry, just any entry. So or just one that was relatively close around here. So I put this rejection wick as like an ideal entry. So I think I had an order in right here and then an order in right here. And then I didn't get another opportunity to enter before we took out my target. So that was my first trade this morning. And then I wasn't really planning to trade after that. That was like three contracts. It was like the bulk of the move was, yeah, like 120 points. And then I was kind of just marking this out. I was in Spanish class and I was kind of just marking this out, seeing what we were doing. I honestly thought that we were going to move to the downside. We took out this liquidity and then kill zone opens and we get a market structure shift right here. And then, excuse me, and then we get this move up into this bearish fair value gap and this bearish order block. And I would have entered there personally. Totally would have entered there 100%. And then, so like literally just all my entries that I would have had would have been all right up in here. And then I would have been targeting this sell side liquidity and this sell side liquidity down here. And then this was our first presented fair value gap. So that seemed pretty realistic for me. But then we had a market structure shift, so I would have been closed out at the close of this candle. So I mean, I still would have been profitable, but it wouldn't have been a good trade. But what I understood right after that was I had this order block posted, which was on the 1 hour right here. So I marked this level out earlier this morning before we came up to it, and I was like, I'd like to see price either come up here, or if you look on the 1 minute, there's buy side liquidity right over here. There's buy side liquidity right here with intermediate low right here, and then our relative equal lows that we took our first profit off of down here. So I was like, this would also be sweet, and they're in the roughly the same area, so that would be sweet level to see get hit. But one thing I noticed after we reversed down here was that we never actually came and swept this order block. So price likely was like, well, we still need to grab liquidity in order to become bearish for the day, which was my bias. So then it made sense once we had this market structure shift to the upside, this fair value gap, which we enter into, to this to the consequent encroachment. We didn't hit this order block that I wanted to hit, but it was close. And then so you'd have had an entry on the consequent encroachment of this fair value gap and on the consequent encroachment of this wick right here. It hits it four individual times. And then you could have, and then you could have entered again. That was a market structure shift. And then you could have entered again off of this order block as it spooled up to order block and buy side liquidity. So that probably would have been the ideal New York AM trade, was this long from here up into here. That would have been like my ideal trade in my opinion. And then price ends up reversing. We're bouncing around, and I wasn't gonna trade New York PM, but I got out for lunch at like 11:45, 11:50, Denver time, and so I was like walking to lunch, and I was like, shit, PM session starts in like 10 minutes. I might as well trade it, and so I see PM session open, and I was kind of just waiting to see like what would happen. And first thing that I saw was we had a market structure shift to the downside right before New York PM. opened, and so I entered somewhere in here as these candles were retracing. I entered like somewhere in here, and then I got stopped out above this high. And but what I realized was we didn't take out any buy side liquidity to fuel a move to the downside, which is what I was expecting. Instead we got this like huge spooling move to the upside to fill in the old new week opening gap before we consolidated for the rest of the day. But that's not important. What happened was I entered as I thought this was a retrace so that we could trade farther down to like these lows and this low, which is a previous day low, and then this low, which is a previous week low. And instead, I get stopped out and we're going to the top and we take out this buy side liquidity. So I was like, oh, that makes sense. With this buy side liquidity now swept, if we wait for a market structure shift, I'd be willing to trade that down to just some liquidity to make back the loss that I made. So, but I was de-risking just because it's afternoon session. I don't typically trade afternoon session. So I was messing around trying to see what we got. We have a suspension block right here that I expect this to move into. We move into the suspension block, and then we're messing around with the suspension block in here, which was fine. And then this gap right here, this fair value gap, turned into an inverse, and then we traded up to the midpoint of the inverse and the suspension block. So I entered right in here, and then I put my stops either right in here or right up here somewhere. Um, but then we immediately went to the downside, and I labeled this as a breakaway gap because we went up, took out buy side liquidity, and then continued to consolidate a little bit before we broke pretty heavily to the downside. There was much more breakaway gaps than this, but I labeled this as a breakaway gap because then we didn't come and fill this in until we switched bias. So that was relevant in my opinion. And then after I entered up here, I put my right at the sell side liquidity, and I was kind of waiting, and I was like, okay, this is our breakaway gap. And then we had some wicks come in, and I realized that it was because of a volume imbalance. Um, so I um so I wasn't really worried. And then we went down and we took out this sell side liquidity. So I labeled this as our order block. Um, and price comes up to it, which would have allowed for another entry. And then after we hit that bearish order block, we continue down, creating a suspension block, which inevitably takes out um, my take profit. So those were my trades for the day. I'll go ahead and put the labels on here so you guys can see what I entered with. Yeah, so this was 3 contracts in the morning. I made like 600 bucks off this in the morning. Yeah, so this morning trade made me 630 bucks. And then this was that trade that I was talking about that I took where I thought this was a retrace. I entered there, got stopped out there, I lost like 50 bucks. Like I said, I was de-risking, so I only just trading with one micro. And then I made like another 140 bucks off of this where I entered right at the midpoint. And I guess I got a little bit lower, but I was trying to enter right at the midpoint of this inverse fair value gap in the suspension block, and then it spooled to the downside, and I took out right here. Little did I know that we would very quickly reverse right after taking out that sell side liquidity and moving to the upside. So, the only way I didn't see this reverse coming. Hang on, I'm gonna get rid of all of these arrows. It's like impossible to see anything with all of these arrows. Um, I hope you guys got the idea. The only reason I was trying to like justify why it had that really quick like end of the day move, and the only reason I had was we yesterday had this very aggressive move down, and so um it would make sense for us to consolidate here, go up, take out some liquidity before then continuing lower for new lows, which would ideally get us out of this horrendous ranging region we've been in. Yeah, so who knows? I think with current geopolitical stances, we could see a serious drop in the market. I don't know if this is true, but I did hear that I quickly saw it somewhere on X as I was like walking to class or something. So I don't know if this is totally true. I haven't looked into it, but I did see that someone was saying that Iran was considering selling, like lifting their sanctions on oil and willing to sell their oil, but only using the the yuan, the Chinese. I don't know if that's how that's pronounced, but the yuan, I think that's how it's pronounced. Which would significantly weaken the U.S. dollar and would also send the U.S. market plummeting. So, Bitcoin's up a little bit today. The U.S. dollar is down. Yeah, pretty rough actually today. Um, I don't really have a whole lot else other than that. That's kind of all I was looking at. Um, but yeah, that's gonna be it for me today. I hope you all had a really good day trading. Um, Appreciate all you guys for watching and hope you enjoyed. I will be trading tomorrow, as long as I can find an entry. Um, Probably like pre-New York AM kill zone again because I have class at 8:15, so we'll see how that goes. But yeah, thanks for watching, and I will see you all tomorrow. I hope you enjoyed. Have a good one, guys.